Okay, so in this video, we want to look at the limitations of GDP because we want to, we want to say, can we draw any conclusions about the living standards? We also want to look at is GDP an accurate reflection of a country's output? And so, let's take a look at a couple of things, a couple of reasons as to why we'll just say call them limitations of GDP. Okay, the first one, and it's a pretty big one, is that GDP does not account for the underground economy. All right, so it can be called the underground economy. It can be called the black market. It could be called extra legal markets. Okay, and whatever name you want to use for these, uh, this is income that's not reported. Okay, so if you think about a drug dealer. If a drug dealer sells, $1,000 worth of drugs, are they going to report that money to the government? Because if they don't, then it's not counted in the national income statistics. And so, when we count GDP, this $1,000 of the drug dealer isn't counted. Okay, it is definitely, it could be considered output, and it is definitely income, but it's not counted because it's not part of the economy. Now, in the U.S., something around 9% of our economy is estimated to be either black market or underground economy, and so that would include drugs, gambling, illegal gambling, what else? Prostitution. This is an interesting one in Greece. Greece had to show an increase in their GDP a few years ago, I think 2006, and so one of the things they decided to do was to count prostitution as part of their GDP, among a couple other things, money laundering, but they wanted to show an increase in their GDP, and so they counted prostitution, and their GDP went up by 25% with prostitution and a couple other things. So this underground economy. Now, when you look at other countries, I saw another statistic that Greece itself, something around 25% of their economy is extra legal. Okay, or it's not part of the formal economy, and so you should ask yourself, what kind of problem do we get to with this? And so I want you to think that, like in the U.S., it's a $15 trillion economy. Okay, let's just say 10% of it. Okay, 9%, 10% is black market, and so that means that $1.5 trillion is going unreported. And so, who would really like to know, would like a piece of that money? And that is that the government would love to collect taxes, income taxes, on $1.5 trillion worth of stuff. And so if you're sitting over here in your Greece, and Greece has a bunch of problems right now, especially they have tax evasion issues, and where their economy is at right now, a fourth of their whole economy is going unreported. And so imagine how much that would help their government in terms of tax revenue. And so you can see that any extra legal markets or black markets or underground economy, it's a very bad thing for the government, and could be on the stability of the government. Typically, you see in developing countries, often you see more of an underground economy or extra legal economy. So anyway, that's part of it. Also, things like uh, personal things that you do for yourself. And so, like, if let's say that you uh, build a patio on your own home, build a patio on your home. Okay, that wouldn't be counted in GDP because it's not a market-based transaction. The labor that you put into it, you're not paying yourself for it, and so it doesn't go into the economy. And so you would say that it's being undercounted. Okay, the GDP is being undercounted. If you have a chef that cooks for you at home, the salary that you pay your chef would be considered part of GDP. But if you just cook for yourself, that's not part of GDP, and so there's some definite limitations. Also, think about if you're a babysitter, okay, and if you don't report your income to the government as a babysitter, let's say that you earn $40 one night, and you take your $40 and you go out and have some fun with it, or put it in the bank, or whatever you do with your money. Uh, if you don't report that income, then you're part of this underground economy. And so technically you're supposed to report all of your income. And so if you're a babysitter, you cut grass or something like that, then you are part of this black market, okay, a black market babysitter. So anyway, so this is one of the big limitations uh, of GDP, of calculating GDP. Okay, another problem, I just wanted to erase that, it was getting messy, is that it doesn't look at, it doesn't measure income inequality or income equality. It doesn't measure income equality. And so going back to when we were looking at gutter, they had $102,000 per capita GDP, but we don't know if if everybody has something around that income, or if it might just be 5 or 10 people at the top have 95% of the income, and everybody else doesn't share in it at all. So we want to look at, and we'll get to this, how they calculate this later, but want to look at what they call their Gini coefficient. And just to make this real quick, 0 would be perfect equality, and anything up to 1 would be perfect inequality. We'll look at how to calculate these, but so perfect equality, everybody has the exact same amount. So I make $1,000, you make $1,000, everybody else makes $1,000. Perfect inequality would say that one person has $100,000 and the rest of the population doesn't. Okay, and so that would be bad. And, so if you look at this, the U.S.'s Gini coefficient is somewhere like 0.7. European countries tend to be lower. They have more equal distribution of income. They might be like 0.35 or so. And so there's debate as to what's a good number there, and we'll get into that later in the class. But when you look at GDP, it doesn't measure any kind of income equality. All right, and so you just can't make that determination as to the standard of living of a country just based on either GDP or per capita GDP. All right, so that's the second one. The third limitation is that it doesn't account for unsustainable practices. Okay, it doesn't account for unsustainable practices. And that just means using the extra cost of using up your resources. And so, let's say that we have a lake here, and you got fish, a bunch of fish swimming in it. Oh yeah. So you got a bunch of fish, maybe not a bunch, because I can't draw fish very well, obviously. So anyway, you got a bunch of fish, and let's say that you got fishermen over here, and one year they decide, you know what, let's catch them all. And so they yank all the fish out, and then, so one year the GDP might be, 100, because they've yanked all the fish out. But if they've yanked all the fish out, now we've got this barren body of water. And so that's the first year when they yank everybody out. What's going to happen in the second year? The second year is they don't have anything. And so we don't know when we look at GDP if they're practicing sustainable development. All right. And so that's another thing that we would want to look at. All right. So a fourth limitation is it doesn't account for happiness and leisure. All right, and this is kind of a big one. There is a country, I forget the name of it. It's in Asia. I'll remember it at some point shortly. But anyway, and they measure what they call the gross national happiness. Excuse me. Sorry. Still have a cough. I think the country is Bhutan, but I could be wrong. But they measure gross national happiness because they think, it's important that we have stuff, but it's also important that we're happy, because we could be tremendously wealthy, but unhappy. We could have all of our political rights, taken away from us. And so, it doesn't account for whether the people of a country are truly happy. There was an article I read about England and how they're trying to track that, and it's an interesting idea to try to track gross national happiness. And it seems kind of like a fluffy notion, kind of soft or kind of, but it is something. If you look at our uh, Declaration of Independence, the uh, pursuit of happiness is one of our golden, that's one of the things that we go for here. So it's obviously important to us, but we don't measure it much, and so sometimes we get real focused on measuring, GDP and per capita GDP, and we got to be efficient, we got to do all this stuff, but sometimes maybe we get lost, maybe we lose focus on this. I don't know. But so here's some questions for you. How could we increase our GDP if we weren't worried about happiness? So right now in the U.S., we work something like 40 hours a week. What if we just said, you know what? We want to double our GDP. How about everybody work 80 hours? You know, people are not going to be happy working 80 hours. And so, if our sole goal was to increase GDP, this is what we would do. What if I said we can cut GDP, but now you only have to work 30 hours? That gives you more time at home. Let's say it's a 4-day week. Would you be happy earning 20% less, but having an extra day off? Working 4 days a week. And so, again, happiness is something that's not measured from GDP, and also it doesn't measure your leisure time, because certainly leisure time is important. You know, some people enjoy their work and they work a whole bunch. Other people don't like their work. They enjoy their time off more. Hopefully you have some combination of the two. But anyway, when you look at GDP, it doesn't tell you if the country is considered happy or not. So anyway, two more. One of the other problems that we have with GDP, especially in the U.S., remember that the real GDP in the U.S. is somewhere around 15.3 trillion right now. It is hard to measure, and I think I'm spelling this right. If not, I apologize. Might be two C's there, but there can be a lot of inaccuracies. A lot of times they take estimates. Sometimes they'll go back and refine the numbers, and so GDP numbers are better after they've gone back, and backdated like the previous quarter or the previous year. They've revised the numbers because they have better data, and so there can be some problems in so much data to be gathered that sometimes the numbers may not be completely right. And that's just a problem. $15 trillion economy, trying to measure that every quarter, but getting sales reports from company, it's a big issue. So anyway, could have inaccuracies. And then the last limitation that we'll look at is that the composition of GDP may be bad. How about that? And that just means that what if in the U.S. all we produced was Nerf footballs? That's it. We don't produce cars. Excuse me. Hope that wasn't too loud. We don't produce cars. We don't produce anything. Computers, Apple computers, they switched to producing Nerf footballs. And so this is it. And we might produce $15.3 trillion worth of Nerf footballs. And so you would say to yourself, you know what, it's amazing that we can produce this much. This is a great number. We're the biggest economy in the world, but all we have are Nerf footballs. We don't have food. We don't have anything. And so when you look at a country's GDP, you can't tell how diversified their economy is. They may just have one commodity that they produce, and that would be bad, or they may be more diversified, and that would be a good thing. But you just can't tell simply by looking at it. All right, and so we'll stop there. Those are the limitations of GDP. And so until next time.